all the time. We played football, and everybody played. And I remember listening for Dad's motorcycle. Everybody did, because then everybody fled inside very quickly, because we had usually done something, or everybody was on punishment and wasn't allowed out. So we would hear his BSA coming down Suitland Parkway, about 2 miles away, and everybody would run inside.
And try to cover up
clean
their
the
crimes.
house, make sure everything was in order. To this day, I tell people that we were dirt poor, but we had the cleanest house. It just had to be. Everything had to be that way.
I just remember going to, the Naries all the time, going to play with Corey from that house.
Yeah.
And Dad always being in the garage and being 300 pounds and the black belt.
You remember that?
I remember that.
Do you remember the black belt?
Yeah, I remember the black belt. I never got the black belt.
But you heard all about it?
I seen it, you guys did it.
You've seen it.
The black belt came out. I remember that house. I remember The Exorcist came on at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And Mom didn't want anybody to watch it.
Yeah?
So she put the TV in my bedroom, and I had this little twin bed in this little bedroom downstairs, and like 1 o'clock you all come piling in to watch The Exorcist.
I don't remember this.
And,
it sounds like something we do.
then everybody left, and I was only like 5. I remember that. And I remember everybody left and shut the light off, and I was freaking out because I was The Exorcist. Yeah, I do remember that.
You waiting for the bed to start moving?
Yeah, I was like freaking out.
Tell me your earliest memories, what you remember about Offutt Drive, this house here specifically.
I remember moving in, and it kind of took me back because here was this big split level house, and it was in a neighborhood, and the neighborhood looked new. And I guess back in the 70s it was fairly new. And it was like, it was a change.
From apartment dwelling.
Right, from what we were used to. And I just thought it was neat, you know.
Well, your father did something, and I don't know if you all picked up on it, but Terry did pick up on it, and him and I talked about it at length when he was drunk one night. But what happened was, after a few years, your father decided to signal Terry out, and Terry would never be punished. Terry was like the chosen one. He would maybe verbally punish him, but nobody was allowed to touch him. And he threatened my life if I ever touched him, if I did anything to ever hurt him. And he never got spanked, he never got hit. And as he got older, he wondered why he felt bad because
I remember a college
he
kid
felt
I kicked his butt. I never felt any
But he felt segregated from the rest of you. And he was. I mean, after a while, when we moved to Elmendorf and your father was brutal there, but then after a while, when he started drinking, he stopped the hitting so much to you kids. He was more, I think, spousal abuse at that point. Everybody had gotten older and was teenagers, and he just couldn't control, I guess, kids the way they were then. But he never really touched Terry at all, ever. And I remember when Terry ran away from home for something stupid, and your father told me if he didn't find Terry in 24 hours, he was going to kill me any minute. He's going to kill me.
When was this? Where was it?
That was when we lived on Elmendorf.
I think we were all competing for Dad's attention, deep down. I think everyone was. You know, everyone was. And it never came. And for some reason, I don't know why, Dad probably gave me more attention. I mean, that's a fact. You know, he did. But I think the reason why he did is I think that he mellowed out. I think he realized what a horrible father he was. And a horrible person he was. And I think after me and Carolyn and TJ, he started to mellow out.
So, you know, that's...
Absolutely. And he was older. He was in his 30s. He wasn't 20 anymore. I mean, that's why I think it went down the way that it did. He changed. To a degree.
That's an interesting possible realization, because it seems like what you're saying is like, by the time you and Carolyn came on the scene of age, Dad mellowed out. He wasn't as abusive, certainly, to you guys, but because of everything that already transpired between me, Timmy, and Matthew, he couldn't or didn't have the ability to treat us in the same light, because he himself, he couldn't erase those memories himself. I mean, that's a possibility, a theory, I don't know.
No, I think he changed.
There's no doubt
And he was so hard-headed and so stubborn. I think with you three, he was never going to move on that subject. Ever.
Yeah.
That's just the way that he was.
Yeah, I mean, you guys used to get punched in the face, and I remember things like snapshots. I don't remember, like, how it started. Or I remember Maddie being the, like, worst one, because Maddie didn't give a shit. He was right back at him, where you guys pretty much shut up. You know, but Maddie just was like, bring it on.
He was begging for it. Yeah, he was. He was like that.
I remember that. I remember opening the door one time, and the air conditioner was on, God forbid. And they answered the door because Corey knocked on the door, and I wanted to open the door, and I had the door open maybe 2 seconds, and I remember getting kicked in the back really, really hard and hitting the ground because the fucking air conditioner's on.
Oh, really?
That's the kind of things I remember.
To me, Suitland, Maryland seemed like a whole new world. I think I thought it was a fresh start for everyone. I got my first dog. My grandmother named him Noble Beast. She borrowed the name from a dog food commercial. During this time, my father started a motorcycle business. He called it Eastern Star. I remember how he would bring me or Timmy along as his personal helper. He paid us $5 a day plus lunch at a fast food restaurant. We thought it was a fantastic deal. Most days seemed rather carefree. I remember playing with my brothers and sister in the yard and building model airplanes. We had fun exploring and playing baseball on the streets. School was always a constant worry for me. My old man would never tolerate low grades. His response for it was usually quick and definite. Nonetheless, these were probably some of the best times I remember as a child. I made my first real friend then, Peter Ruffin. What better way to cherish your childhood memories than to recall how you shared them with a good friend? One day we moved from the house on Offutt Drive to another one directly across the street. Our landlord owned both houses, so he let us move into this better one on Elmendorf Drive. He had a garage, perfect for my father's motorcycle business. Perhaps the sweetest thing I remember was having my grandmother live with us. It was so nice because she was a very good cook and provided a rare sense of family and home. But it was not to last.
Now, I will tell you, one of the best times I can remember is when we first moved to Offutt Drive and Grandma lived with us. For me, that's the best time that I lived with your father because I really loved my mother. And I loved sharing things with her. And it was so nice that I could finally work and come home and she'd have dinner ready. And there was some semblance where there wasn't so much violence. He had to kind of put a cap on it.
Seemed more normal.
Yeah, he had to do it all, incognito down the basement.
Yeah.
And that was really a good period for me. And he got so upset with the control because your father was all about control that after a year he kicked her out.
Is that what happened? He kicked
her out, and I was.
Because I remember toward the end they were sort of having issues.
I was just sick
bickering.
over it. My mother didn't do anything.
I didn't think so.
But he kicked her out. So I just, and it was at that point, stay with him or live on the streets. So.
Yeah, I didn't think so because she was a.
And she really liked it there. She used to talk to the kids, and she used to look forward
It was
to
nice
making
for
dinner.
us. We loved it. I mean,
Yeah.
it was really nice for us. I remember that. I mean, we really did like that a lot. That was just
And then
a shame.
when she had to live alone, there was nothing for her to look forward to in her whole life.
Yeah,
Everything
that
had been
was
taken
terrible.
away from her.
That was terrible. The only good thing was she didn't go too far, so we were able to
Oh,
visit
yeah.
her a lot.
I used to sneak money out of our checking account, which we really didn't have, and help your grandmother pay for her prescriptions. But I knew I could never let your father know.
Well, hell no. But I'm glad you did it.
Well, I did what I could do, but I couldn't do a whole lot.
Remember the incident where Dad would make us... Dad would, like, you know, we were kids. We weren't that big, like 11, 12 years old maybe. And he'd be like, go paint the house. Remember that?
I know.
The outside of the house!
Yeah, remember that?
Right? So, we'd be fucking...
Oh, we need some ladders.
Right. Remember we painted 4114? We painted off a drive, too.
We didn't paint the whole house.
No, we painted the outside of the house. The front of the outside. And I remember Dad said, all right, paint the gutters first, and then paint the... Back then they didn't even have aluminum siding. They just had slats. And then paint the slats white, right? So I said, okay. And he looks at Matt and he says, all right, Matt. He says, I want you to hold the ladder. Because it was on a hill, you know. So I'm up on the ladder and I'm painting the gutter, right? And the next thing I know, the ladder starts going down the gutter, right? And I jumped on the bush to hold the bush and the ladder fell.
This really happened.
This happened. And I looked down and Matt apparently was sitting on the bottom rung of the ladder reading a book. And anyway, Dad dealt with him abruptly, as he always does. And,
Well,
I didn't get hurt or nothing, but I remember the incident with the ladder.
I remember the incident in Elmendorf Drive where there was a big refrigerator at the bottom of the steps.
Oh,
in the
yeah,
backyard.
I'll never forget that.
And he just looked at me and you and said, take it
It
upstairs.
was not a refrigerator, it was a freezer.
Well, it was a freezer. I know it was big and it was heavy.
Right.
We did get it up there. I don't know how, but
We physically, at our age, you know...
he was standing behind us.
And he was
saying,
cussing
you're
us.
going to get that refrigerator or I'm going to kick your fucking ass. And he's standing right behind you while you're
And when
trying
we
to push this thing up there.
And when we, I remember he got so hot over that he kicked me down the stairs. He kicked you too.
Yeah.
But he kicked me down the stairs over that refrigerator. And I think it's the only time I ever remember him apologizing. He didn't apologize. He just said, maybe you're too young for that job.
Yeah,
And I
he did.
shouldn't
That's the only time, one of the few times.
And I
ever
shouldn't have
remember
asked you to do that. But he never said he was sorry.
I remember going to school. We walked to school, and I remember I failed the first grade because I didn't go to school.
Did you? Why? What was up with that?
I didn't go to school, and I remember it's the only time Dad came to a parent conference ever. I didn't go. Everybody would leave, and then I would go back to the house.
I never knew about that. What do you mean you went back
and watch
to the house?
TV all day. And
You just said, F it, I'm not going to school?
I missed like 50 days. And then I remember in the spring, Dad came in the white station wagon with the conference, and I was there, and everyone was there, and they said I'd missed 50 days or 43 days, something crazy. And they had to hold me back because of my reading. It wasn't up to par. I remember that.
I guess it wouldn't be.
And I remember being poor. I remember that. I remember having to wear the same pants every day. That kind of stuff. That's why it's not.
Well,
But I remember that. I remember.
You were screwed because you were sort of at the bottom of the line. And it's like me and Timmy, we usually get the best clothes, and that shit just went down the line.
Oh yeah. I remember everything was hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
And I remember being very conscious of that. Very conscious that everything, was, And in our neighborhood, I mean, they made fun of you. That's just how it was back then.
Yeah,
It was
because
brutal.
like last year, Timmy wore that shirt.
Yeah.
I hate that.
I remember Mr. Judd next door,
Yeah.
across the street.
Yeah.
You weren't there, you weren't living there anymore, but I had somehow I was taking out the trash and I went to put the trash bag down on my foot while I was answering the phone. I was talking to Mom. I hung up, I picked up the trash bag, and apparently I busted an artery because it like hit the ceiling. The blood was everywhere. And I remember we had a white carpet, and that's all I was thinking. I'm in so much trouble.
Because you're getting blood on the carpet?
Because I was getting blood in the kitchen, which was going to get on the carpet. So I called Mom back, and I'm freaking out, and I have all these towels around me. So she calls him, and he comes over, and he's this big black man with these great big boots. And I remember just freaking out the whole time, not even worried about me, because he got blood on the carpet with his big boots, trying to get me out of the kitchen, pick me up, and take me out the house. And that's all I was thinking the whole time. You know, I'm in so much trouble, So I get home. He took me to Andrews Air Force Base because that was the closest place. And he was really, you know, it was a big deal. And they couldn't give me stitches because they could just stop the bleeding because I wasn't part of the military.
Yeah. All they could do is stabilize you.
So I remember that, and I remember the doctor telling Dad and Mom, because they finally got there, to take me to a hospital because I definitely needed stitches. And we got in the car, and I remember Dad smacking me as hard as he could and said, you should have had your fucking shoes on.
No, really?
And I never went to the hospital, and I never said anything, but I had shoes on. And I remember Mom coming to him later on that night and telling him I had shoes on and him going off on her. He was pissed off about the carpet. Just like I knew he would be. Because we only had the carpet for like 3 weeks.
He said, if you're going to bleed, God damn it, at least you're in the kitchen.
And I remember the best thing that happened was we went to Catholic school.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Because we got to wear uniforms. And that made you feel
like everybody else.
Yeah, that stigma wasn't there, and I think that the church helped us out. I don't think they paid for it. I don't think Mom and Dad paid for it. I think we were like a charity family. I don't know if TJ wasn't going to school. It was just me and Carolyn going to school. And I can remember pulling up in the station wagon. It used to have a problem with the starter. And I used to remember praying that it wouldn't happen. And sometimes it would cut off. And in front of 300 or 400 kids, Mom would jump out with a big, huge screwdriver and hold it on the starter and the frame of the car to create an arc, and she'd start the car. And I used to think, oh my God.
Your friends are looking on, Terry.
But that was just part of it. That was just part of the deal. And I think I used sports at that time to just get away from everything. I remember Timmy's 16th birthday when Dad broke his jaw. Either broke his jaw or, he did, he bloodied his lip and his nose and all on his birthday, and I snuck him in food. Because remember, you weren't allowed to eat. That was the punishment. So you didn't eat. You went to bed hungry.
Well, what?
So,
when you hit him in the face?
Yeah. And I remember listening to Jethro Tull for hours on end.
You remember Jethro
And Pink
Tull?
Floyd.
Was that what was
And Led
going on?
Zeppelin. I remember all that.
Sitting on the park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intent. Snot running down his nose, greasy fingers smearing shabby clothes. Hey, Aqualung, drying in the cold sun, watching as the pretty panties run. Hey, Aqualung, feeling like a dead duck, spitting out pieces of his broken love. Oh, Aqualung.
In time, me, Timmy, and Matthew began to act out toward our father's torturous treatment in various ways. Matthew, in particular, became more open and brazen towards him. It seemed like he just didn't care anymore. We thought he was either brave or crazy. I suppose all we wanted was some way to get out of that house, to get away from him. It wasn't long before Dad began to drink heavily. In the winter of 1978, my mother gave birth to her last child, TJ. At the very least, it seemed he was entering a world of uncertainty. Road out here. We're standing up here right across the street from Morningside. We used to walk this way, coming up from this way from home to get to junior high school, Benjamin D. Floyd. Sometimes after school we were able to stop here at It says Mr. Weenie now. I think it was called, it was Tasty Freeze when I was a kid. You can see over here, those. Doesn't look like they're selling much ice cream right now. No ice cream. Looks very closed to me. Well, those days are gone anyway.
And I remember I had a big wheel with clickers on it, on the wheels. And Dad, one day I was riding my big wheel around the neighborhood and it was driving him crazy because it just kept clicking and clicking and clicking. And he was working on a car and he walked over and he didn't even say a word to me and he bent down and cut my clickers off with a pair of wire cutters. And then walked right back to his car. Didn't say a word.
No way. Yeah, it sounds like that.
Didn't say a word, so I just sort of sat there with my big wheel shocked.
Because you've been declicked?
Yeah. And I remember the roses on Elmendorf Drive. I remember Carolyn used to like to play on roller skates in front of the house.
Almendorf Drive, and what do you remember? Do you remember anything about the house? Anything like that?
Yeah, I remember the house. I remember a few of the neighbor kids.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Peter Ruffin.
Peter Ruffin, you remember him?
And Terry had a paper route. I used to go out every day on his paper route and sit on his handlebars while I did the paper route.
You sat on his handlebars?
Mm-hmm. When he would let me. You know, but that was a big deal to go out with my big brother and do the paper route.
And Noble Beast would follow behind?
Noble Beast was there. I don't remember if he would follow behind. I remember April would always escape. There was always a possibility that April would, get out of the backyard and we'd all have to chase her down.
Do you remember the chore list Mom used to put up that you and Carolyn, you get home from school?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone had to do
their
duties when they get home. And
I remember. And me and Carolyn used to fight horribly.
I know.
And to this day, I don't know why. I mean, horribly. We would fight.
He was always
there.
with his
I remember
friends.
you guys fighting all the time.
Yeah.
Constantly.
On Clear Spring? More of it was in Elmendorf.
This was the same thing. He would call you fat pig. You
Very-
called him gay fruit.
Gay fruit.
Gay fruit, fat pig. You remember that?
Yeah, that was all the time.
Or he used to say, call you Jabba the Hutt.
I don't remember.
I remember these
Terry
things
the
vividly.
Fairy. I remember Terry the Fairy and
Terry the Fairy?
yeah, things like that.
Yep.
And I wish it didn't happen that way, but it definitely wasn't a...
You were kids.
Well, yeah,
That's what they do.
That was just it.
Trying to run it.
Stay in.
Carolyn, say hello. You're on camera. It is.
I know Dad rides or anything he wants.
Oh yeah. Well.
By the summer of 1980, I graduated from high school and enlisted in the Navy. My best friend Peter had already entered into the Army a few months before me. My brother Timmy got a job with Coca-Cola, and Matthew was kicked out of the house by my father. I was told that Dad stepped up his drinking then. He was stressed out by all the job terminations occurring in the federal government. Eventually, Mom and Dad decided to move further outside the city. While I was away in the Navy, they moved to a small town called Clear Spring, right outside of Hagerstown, Maryland. For the most part, my mother lived there ever since. This Christmas, in 2004, it'll be the first time in a very long time our entire family got together.
We're going there, Leia. Paper, pictures.
What's going on?
Hey. Just so you know, I need them. Jack! Christmas, Jack. Audrey! Hi.
Hey.
What you got there? What you guys want this?
She's the excavator. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Pineapple upside down here. All right, how about yourself? Merry Christmas to you too.
Okay, look at our.
What do you want?
But I remember, do you remember moving to Clear Spring?
I was in the Navy, but I heard about that story when you rented a truck and it broke down along the way. And,
Oh, that was a nightmare, yeah.
yeah, I
And
mean,
Uncle Johnny going down the porch steps.
I heard about that too.
Oh my.
He was drunk, wasn't he?
Yeah, but it was like, where's Uncle Johnny? I don't know. And all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. You hear him
Did he
going.
actually help? Did he help do that move?
Yeah.
How could he
And
convince him to do that?
Well, he didn't help until we broke the axle halfway there and had to pull over. And Johnny came to rescue us and takes us to the place to get it fixed and call the people that had the rental truck and blah, 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 blah. What a mess. But we finally got moved there, and then to move into the house, and it was haunted.
Yeah, so they say.
No, it really was. And it was just like, well, this is different. But you know, it's all my kids, Carolyn, Terry, all of them felt like when we got to Clear Spring, we finally got home. The only person that didn't feel comfortable there was you.
No, because that wasn't my home. It's not where I grew up. I had already grown
They
up.
didn't. I mean, Terry really didn't. But it was so funny. Everybody is like, "Well, we should have lived here 20 years ago."
Yeah, I just felt so out of place. I mean, it was just too small town for me. I guess I was at the age where I wanted to go do things, and Clear Spring just wasn't gonna offer that. I mean, they didn't have what I wanted to do. I mean, didn't have anything, and maybe for a kid that's okay.
Your father didn't like it. Well, he didn't like it mainly because he had commutes so darn far.
I don't think he even liked the area. He told me. I mean, he said he didn't like, the rural mentality of the people and everything.
Well, your father always said when he was sick, he said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to buy a place on the bay, blah, blah, blah. But then as he felt better with all the medicine they were giving him, he got further away from that. So I knew he'd never go there.
Well, I know at first when we got to Clear Spring, Carolyn was still pretty young, and Pete and Terry was still pretty young. And we didn't really have any friends because we were like new in town. But as they got a little bit older, I'd say after we were there for about a year, and I started school, I went to kindergarten there. They got into drugs and stuff, and so they started hanging out with kids their age and all that stuff. And I went to school. It was a pretty normal childhood at Clear Spring until Mom and Dad got a divorce. Probably like the best part of my childhood.
Was it really?
Yeah, I'd have to say so. Those friends I made when I was a kid are still my friends today.
Right, because you're still living in the same area where they are.
Yeah.
They're there.
I remember I was like 14. I went with a girl and we drank like, I don't know how much whiskey. And ended up in this cow field like 2 alleys over behind that big blue house in Clear Spring.
Was that with Krista or whatever?
Yeah, so Mom caught us. And Mom's dragging me up the street and I'm so drunk I can't even walk. And I told her, I just blurted it out. That was the first time I told her.
What happened was Carolyn got drunk, very drunk, and she confessed to me what had happened when he had touched her. And
Oh, you mean out of Clear Spring?
but let me tell you something. She went to sleep. I let her sleep it off. I wanted to listen to her in the morning when she was sober. And I said, Carolyn, what you told me that last night, is that true? And she said yes. And she just started weeping.
So she put me to bed and everything else, and I remember the next day she came in my room and asked me if you said something when you were drunk, and I need to know if it's true or not. And I just said yeah. I knew right away what it was. I just said yeah, I remember saying that, and that's true.
Well,
And,
of course, you know that.
and she said she was so afraid that I wouldn't believe her.
That's probably why she didn't say nothing for so long.
Well, he also said he'd kill her and all that stuff. You don't know how many people in Clear Spring tried to kill your father. That's a horrible thing to bring up on this.
Was he
but
pissing
it's
a lot
true.
of people off?
It's true. No, I mean, it was more than one person. I wasn't me, but I was just like, it had escalated so bad with your father that I told him, I went down and I confronted him what Carolyn had told me. And I said, and all he said to me is, once you say it, you can't take it back. And I said, get your butt out. Get out of here. I didn't care if we were going to be penniless at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a lot different if you're going to kick me in a corner and beat me. You're not going to do that to my kids. Because that's just violation. And he said, all I ask is that I can leave, this is right after Christmas, if I can wait until the first of the year, because it was a weekend coming up. And he left. I started to write a book when I was like 20 about everything that happened to us. And I just jotting it down like a journal, and that's kind of how I ended up at the psychiatrist's office, because I couldn't remember. It made me realize I need to remember, like the day that, and I think, I mean, this is something I always wanted my family to know, but the day that Dad did that to me, that I got like abused in that sort of way.
Was this on Elmendorf Drive when this happened, at Clear Spring, or what?
Elmendorf. But I had on I had on an outfit, because we had, I think the earliest memory in my life was preschool. I was going to some preschool, and we had to get our picture taken, so Mom put on these green tights and this velvet green dress or whatever for the picture that day. And that was the day that he did that. And
you still have this picture to remember this.
And the picture's in that book that you
sorry
have.
about that.
So that kind of like, that's it. And then I remember that, and then I remember 5th grade. So everything in between, it used to really, really bother me. Like, you know, people talk about school and talk about, you know, it's like, I just wanted my family to know that picture, that was the day. You know, that was the exact day, because that's the only time I wore that outfit.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
Mom doesn't know that. Nobody knows that. Yeah, I think you're the first family member I've told. But I mean, I'm okay with it now. I'm not okay with it. It's better that Dad talked to me and really apologized and said he had, and he said I have no justification.
So he did actually come to and apologize?
Oh yeah.
He did?
I remember when I went down in Rockville, and we knew he was going to die, and me and him went for a walk, and we had Rocky, and we sat down on this bench, and I said, you know, I know you're going to die, but, you know, you need to say something. Why? I just want to know why. What goes through someone's head to do that to their own child? I just have to know why. And he was like in tears, saying, I have no justification. I have no, you know, I can't even sit here and tell you that I was on drugs, or he just was like, I have no, you know, reasoning. You know, I can't, you know, he was really, really, you know, I'm so sorry. Because I had a lot of problems in my sexual relationships, but I didn't understand why, you know, what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
You know, why, you know, and I used to go to Mom and talk about it, and she'd be like, she kind of was the one that encouraged me to confront Dad. Just, you bring it up.
You know, it's a good thing that you did before he died.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine the baggage you still have. You know? at least you have the opportunity.
But the whole time I didn't was because of fear. Because everybody always kind of feared Dad in the back of your mind. It's like,
Yeah.
even though I was older and I knew he'd never hit me or do anything strange or you know what I mean? It was like, and I felt guilty because I'm like, I hate to do this to you because you're getting ready to die, but, you know what I mean? But he didn't, it was totally opposite of how I thought he'd act. He was...
Remorseful?
Oh, really remorseful. I mean, he cried. I never seen him cry. He was sitting outside on this bench holding a dog and he started crying. And I used to, I thought at the time, and I even said to him, are you crying because you feel guilty? Or because you are remorseful? You know, because you're going to die. And I just flat out said it, you're going to die, and are you afraid you're going to go to hell? You know, and that's kind of how I was, you know, because when I first started the conversation, I was just full of anger. Like, you son of a bitch. You know, you don't realize how much you affected me in my whole life and what you did. And he was, I think that's what freaked him out. He just was like, you know, I think he needed to hear that.
Yeah, of course. You're getting toward the end of your life, you start thinking about stuff like that.
And I think it was in the back of his mind about his destination.
Of course, it was.
You know,
We had
of all the
discussions
things he
like
did
that.
in his life.
But it's shame. I mean, it happened. There's nothing you can do. I think the feelings are so strong, though. To this day, he doesn't have a marker on his grave. And all of us make fairly decent money. You know, there's no marker on his grave.
Maybe.
And I've a couple times said that I've told Cherry that I'm going to take care of this. And I probably will, but, you know, when you think about it, sometimes I think he really was an awful, no good motherfucker.
Mm. Yeah.
And I'm not putting a marker on his grave. And that's horrible, but that's reality.
It felt like our family was splitting apart. Dad was banished, and me and Timmy and Matthew were off on other endeavors. My mother was having perhaps one of the worst times of her life. After all those years of abuse she suffered, a divorce was now the inevitable outcome. I remember these times as being extremely difficult and depressing for her. All of us felt like we were hanging without a resolution. Where were we going as a family? What would become of us? About this time, I got out of the Navy and I decided it was time for me to get a job and strike it out on my own. I moved back to Washington, D.C. Now, my mother was alone with Terry, Carolyn, and TJ. For so many years later, me and my siblings have remained distant and reserved. Everyone was always doing their own thing. Perhaps now that we are older, we can begin to understand the value of being a family. We must understand that our lives on this planet are very limited, indeed laughably short in the grand scheme of things. We must drop all this heavy baggage so that we can live our final days on the sweetest note possible. I do believe we can happily move on after a good cry.
Do you represent the end of the line here? Mr. G, maybe one
late 1992, Dad was diagnosed with lung cancer. He had been a heavy smoker for most of his entire life. For a brief time, Mom tried to renew her relationship with him by moving into his Rockville apartment. It didn't work out. Perhaps, she said, it was mostly a vain attempt to show compassion to a dying man. Or perhaps she was looking for a resolution before the end. With the exception of my sister's abuse, he provided no apologies or expressions of remorse. Dad was painfully stubborn all the way to the end. These photos are among the last ones taken of him. One night in March of 1994, I came into his apartment and found him lying on his bed in a coma. By early the next morning, he was dead. Me, Mom, and all of my brothers and sister were by his bedside. Most of us knew we were going to have to find our own peace.
Mom,
I don't know, look at the shark.
we ought to plan the next get-together.
As we are fortunate to be alive and have the ability to share one another's company, it's hard not to forget and be at peace with the past. I believe that all of us have learned to deal with all those difficult memories in one way or another. The most beautiful thing now is how we've realized that sticking together as a family is most important. Sure, we may have to go to our graves without any true closure from our father, but time and maturity eventually provides the same. I believe we are almost healed now. The most difficult and burdensome baggage we've been carrying all these years is finally dropping and falling to the wayside. If these children and spouses are the culmination of so much pain and struggle, then I would have to conclude that we aren't doing so bad. Life seems so beautiful.
And love is not the easy thing, the only baggage that you can bring. Love darkness is to keep us apart, and if the daylight feels like it's a long way on, and if your glass heart should crack for a second, you turn back. Oh no, be strong. Packing a suitcase for a place none of us has been, a place that has to be believed to be seen. You could have flown away, a singing bird in an open cage who will only fly for freedom. Oh, walk on. What you got, they can't deny it. Can sell it or buy it. Walk on. Stay safe tonight. I know it aches, how your heart it breaks. You can only take so much. Oh, slow down. The end is not as fun as the start. Please stay a child somewhere in your heart. I'll give everything you want, except the thing that you want. You are the first one of your kind, and you feel like no one before. You're still right under my door. I kneel, 'cause I want you some more. I want the lot of what you got, and I want nothing that you're not. Everywhere you go, you shout it. You don't have to be shy about it. Some things you shouldn't get too good at, like smiling, crying, and celebrity. Some people got way too much confidence, baby.